Good morning. All right, I'm going to just introduce you and then you can take off.
Awesome.
All right, so welcome to Joyspring Online Family Festival. Dr. Sundiata Soon-Jahta is going to be presenting No More Arguments, How to Resolve Conflict in a Peaceful Way. Dr. Sundiata Soon-Jahta is the co-creator of GROW, a network of people and initiatives designed to promote and create social, economic, and political systems centered on liberation, social and environmental sustainability, and unconditional love. He's extremely passionate about helping people discover the power of authentic dialogue, a communication framework that leverages complex issues in personal relationships and organizations to help them generate solutions that foster deeper understanding, cohesiveness, freedom, and trust. Welcome, Dr. Soon-Jahta.
Thank you for having me. Thank you for the invite. Thank you for creating this gathering. I look forward to sharing. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen and bring up my slides. Let's see. Okay, can you give me a thumbs up if you all can see my screen? I got to log out and come back in. I'm sorry.
Log out and come back on. This happens. Weird. We'll just be patient. It's an exercise and an opportunity.
Yes.
So while Dr. Soon-Jahta figures that out, I can also share that Dr. Soon-Jahta is also the host of the Theory of Indivisibility podcast, which analyzes the evolutionary origins, current complexities, and future of our social, economic, and political systems. I had all these links up to share on the free Google sites that suddenly became unavailable to the public. So I will have to transfer all the details over to the new joyspring.org site if that doesn't become available again. But I will also post his links to access his resources and contact information on the replay, the YouTube replay for this presentation. So I'll read a little more about the description for this presentation. Learn how to resolve conflicts in a peaceful way that strengthens relationships. In this class, you will learn how to resolve conflicts and disagreements with friends and family using authentic dialogue. In an authentic dialogue, people listen deeply in order to understand one another better and search for win-win solutions. You will learn the difference between an authentic dialogue, a discussion, and a debate, the three foundational skills of authentic dialogue: empathetic listening, empathetic questioning, and tolerance, and how to initiate and engage in an authentic dialogue to resolve a conflict. So he will facilitate a discussion using a slideshow presentation for students to follow along with while asking and answering questions throughout the presentation to ensure comprehension and keep the class engaging. So interestingly, we're having a lot of technical issues the last couple days. And so we're just gonna clear the channels for this to all fall into place in a matter of moments. So hang tight. Well, I wonder, since we have this time together while we're waiting for him to join us, maybe we can use this opportunity, since we already gathered together. If anybody wants to share why they're here, ways that they are finding it maybe useful to know more about how to resolve conflicts in a peaceful way. I can begin. I know that in my household with my children, conflicts flare up all the time between the kids or between myself and the children. And although my intention is to resolve things peacefully, it doesn't always happen that way. And here he comes coming back on. Hopefully that's going to work. But so I welcome anyone else to share while we're waiting for him to get set up.
Hello, I am back.
Hi, welcome back.
I'm going to try to do this from my cell phone.
No worries. You know, things like this happen. If we don't get a good recording, we can always re-record it and share that replay at another time.
Okay. In the meantime, I'm like simultaneously trying to get my computer back online.
This is a good example of the kinds of things that might disrupt our ability to handle things in a more peaceful manner. And so how we can still engage our tools and resources when things are stressful and life is not going perfectly peacefully and our expectations are being dashed and our emotions are charged and our nervous system. So it's great I'm looking forward to hearing more tools that we can add to our toolbox.
Yes, absolutely. So,
Julia, Gabriel just recommended you send the slides to me and I share my screen.
Beautiful. Let's make that happen.
All right. That'll be a new learning curve for me. I've never done that, but I believe this will be possible.
Thank you for that suggestion. Perfect. I love it. I love how we're problem solving together. Okay, let's get into this. Hello and welcome to everyone. Welcome to No More Arguments, How to Resolve Conflicts in a Peaceful Way. On the next slide, you'll see that a picture of me in a more professional, clean cut form than what you saw a few minutes ago. I'm Dr. Soon-Jahta, and I'm passionate about teaching conflict resolution using authentic dialogue because authentic dialogue is collaborative and it strengthens relationships. So next slide. What you're going to learn today is the differences between authentic dialogue, debate, and discussion. The three foundational skills of authentic dialogue and how to resolve conflicts using authentic dialogue. Next slide. I often hear people using dialogue, discussion, and debate interchangeably, but they are not the same. Let's take a moment to distinguish the differences between the three. Debate is oppositional. Two or more sides oppose each other and attempt to prove each other wrong, find flaws, and make counter arguments. In debate, winning is the only goal. In a discussion, opposing viewpoints are presented, analyzed, and defended, and the participants decide which one is the best. In a discussion, the participants want their own views to be accepted by the others involved. The focus is on winning rather than on learning. Discussion is more like a civil form of debate. But in dialogue, in authentic dialogue, people freely explore issues, listen deeply to each other, and temporarily suspend their own views and assumptions in order to understand one another better and search for common ground. The purpose of dialogue is to go beyond any one individual's understanding. In dialogue, we are not trying to win. We all win if we are doing it right by coming up with solutions that everyone can agree to. So I'm going to pause there and just ask you all, are there any questions? Have you all heard of the term authentic dialogue before? Does this make sense?
Hi, I'm Julia.
Hi, Julia.
I have a young son, he's 25, so he's always on the debate side of things, and it's hard to manage that.
Okay.
Like he brings up very oppositional points, and then he keeps like charging ahead with that.
Understood. Understood. I think that some of the tools that I'm going to share during this discussion will help with that. Can you all see the subtle differences between dialogue and discussion based on the explanation I just gave? I think that oftentimes, I believe one of the things that I say is that debate is the foundational framework for our society. You know, we see that in schools, we have debate clubs. Our politicians debate on national TV as a way of winning elections and basically a way to leverage and gain power. And in relationships, we leverage debate-based tactics to get our way in a lot of instances. Like, for example, if someone is the boss, or someone is the quote unquote is the parent, or the quote unquote man of the household, if those dynamics still exist in some relationships, or some people leverage their debate-based skills, are extroverted and quick-witted, and able to use that as an advantage in a debate or a discussion as a way to quote unquote win. When talking to someone who may be more introspective and may need more time to process information and gather their thoughts before, responding. So the way our society is structured, it's more suitable, for debate for the reasons. Again, a discussion is just a more subtle way of debating. And I guess I'll go back to that question. Can you all see kind of the subtle difference between debate and discussion? Okay, thumbs up, great. Just to point out, and I want to drive home the fact that within a discussion, the difference is like using a debate tends to use all the tactics I just mentioned. It tends to escalate, tension whenever there's a disagreement or conflict. Whereas discussion is a little bit more level, where both parties actually listen to one another a little bit. They analyze each other's perspective a little bit, but at the end of the day, they're still defending their own, and they're still trying to win. Ultimately, authentic dialogue is about creating something new. Think about it. Every person in a relationship is unique and always evolving. Through authentic dialogue, you get to resolve conflicts in a way where every person's voice is heard and respected, and every person feels valued, cared for, and feels like a meaningful contributor to the friendship, partnership, family, or team. So before we get into the steps for how to have an authentic dialogue, we're going to play a quick game called No More Arguments, the Game, based on the descriptions that we just learned for debate, discussion, and dialogue. So just so you all know, this game is, I created these scenarios, sort of case studies, mini case studies, with young people in mind, with like teenagers in mind. So this adaptation of this training was created with them in mind. I have a more high-level training that is intended for both parties in a discussion, or both parties within a conflict, to learn together to use the skills. The way I'm teaching it today, you're going to learn how to engage someone in an authentic dialogue without them even knowing the skills. I'm going to teach you how to initiate and engage without someone even knowing how to do this. So with that being said, at the end of the scenario that I'm going to read, I want you to tell me if it's A, a debate, B, a discussion, or C, authentic dialogue. All right, you all ready? Give me a thumbs up if you're ready for the first scenario. Okay, so Malik and Sarah are gamers and really good friends. They decided to team up to enter a gaming tournament with a huge cash prize. Sarah tells Malik that she thinks that they should practice together every day for 4 hours leading up to the competition, but Malik tells her that he thinks that's a horrible idea. Sarah immediately defends her idea and tells Malik why it's the best approach. Malik listens and then explains why his strategy would be better. Sarah listens to Malik's idea and then tells Malik that she still thinks her idea is the best, so Malik says, okay, whatever, let's do it your way. Was this a debate, discussion, or authentic dialogue? So what you can do is you can hold up a 1 if you think it's a debate. You can hold up a 2 if you think it's a discussion, or a 3 if you think it's an authentic dialogue. And I can see your answer. I see that Misha typed it into the chat. I see your answer, Misha. Thank you. All right. And most of you chose correctly that it is a discussion. Absolutely. So both parties actually listened to each other, analyzed each other's thoughts, but ultimately they also defended their own. And then Malik decided, okay, we can just go with your idea for Sarah. So that makes it more of a discussion. So growing up, I mostly saw people arguing to solve conflicts and disagreements, yelling, shouting, crying, physically fighting, manipulating, threatening, blaming, shaming are all examples of how so many people in our society respond to conflicts. So next, I'm going to share 3 skills with you that you can use to replace those divisive responses to conflict. 3 skills that are necessary for authentic dialogue. So the first skill is empathetic listening. Empathetic listening is listening with the intent to understand both the other person's perspectives and their feelings. All of your attention is on the other person. Listening empathetically requires using more than just your ears. It relies on many of your senses: seeing, hearing, feeling, and your intuition. Effective empathetic listening sends the message that I understand your problem and how you feel about it. What you are saying is important to me, and I am not judging you. So, does that make sense to everyone? How many of you, give me on a thumbs up, thumbs to the middle, or thumbs down scale how good you think you are at empathetic listening? If you're great at it, give me a thumbs up. Thumbs halfway if you think you're thumbs down if you have a long way to go. All right. And just so everyone knows, I do have a cheat sheet that I'm going to send to Deanna after this, and she will send it to all of you. That will give you notes, so you don't necessarily have to take notes right now, if you don't want to. All right, so the next skill is empathetic questioning. Empathetic questioning requires asking open-ended questions that do not lead, and they have the following characteristics. They are focused on learning more about the individual, not about satisfying a need of the asker. They are asked neutrally, with no emotional charge, hidden suggestion, assumption, or contradictory body language from the asker. They require some thought and reflection. They promote insight, and they uncover opinions and feelings. Empathetic questioning is the foundational skill number 2. How are you all with empathetic questioning? Give me a thumbs up, thumbs to the middle, or thumbs down. I'll admit, you all, I'm like here with empathetic questions. It's something I need to work on. I'm still getting better at, because I think our initial response is to want to respond immediately when we're, engaged in any type of conflict. But I've learned that, through authentic dialogue, it kind of, again, it de-escalates tension. And when tensions are de-escalated, which I'm going to share with you how to do in a moment, but when tensions are de-escalated, it's easier to ask questions because you truly feel that the other person is going to reciprocate and do the same for you. So authentic dialogue makes it a safe communication environment so that you can exercise these practices and these skills. Next slide, please. The third skill that's a foundational tenet and skill for authentic dialogue is tolerance. Tolerance is the ability to tolerate the existence of behaviors or beliefs that you do not necessarily agree with. Tolerance is accepting that we are all unique and complex as individuals, and it relieves us of the stress of feeling like everyone must be the same. So an example of tolerance in my life is one of my closest friends is Muslim. He's a Muslim. He's a devout Muslim. And I grew up Christian. However, currently, I don't practice religion at all. So he and I are still very close friends. We're able to hold space for one another in our beliefs. We're able to listen to one another and listen to one another's beliefs without judging one another, without morally judging one another, and without letting that impact the quality of our friendship. So I think that I have a thumbs up with tolerance. I think I'm really good at that. I don't let many things bother me. I believe in other people's right to believe what they want. How are you all with tolerance? Give me a thumbs up, thumbs to the middle, or thumbs down based on your ability to tolerate different beliefs than yours. Okay, next slide, please. Oh, it's time for another round of our game. No more arguments, the game. All right, are you all ready for another scenario? Okay, here goes. Evan and Dara have been in a romantic relationship with one another for 3 months. Evan confronts Dara about the fact that she's always posting pics on Instagram with her family and friends, but she never posts any of him. Dara lies and tells Evan that it's not on purpose and that she probably hasn't done so because she doesn't love any of the pictures that they have together. The truth is, Dara doesn't feel comfortable posting pics of them yet because she wants to make sure the relationship is really solid first. Evan tells her that he's not buying that excuse and that she must be ashamed of him. Dara rudely interrupts Evan while he's expressing his feelings and tells him that she can't be in a relationship with someone who doesn't trust her. Evan snaps back angrily and says that he can't be in a relationship with someone who was ashamed to be with him. Was this an A, authentic dialogue, B, discussion, A, debate, B, discussion, or C, authentic dialogue? So you can show me by your fingers. Absolutely. This was a debate in every way. One of the telltale signs of a debate is lies. Again, can you all still hear me? It says my internet connection is unstable. Give me a thumbs up if you hear me. Hold on. Or say something if you can hear me, because let me see here.
We can hear you. Yes, we can hear you.
You can hear me? Okay, great. Okay. Thank you. My screen is freezing a little bit, so, all right. So one of the telltale signs is lying again, because the goal of a debate is to win. And I'm sure you all can agree that one of the places we see this the most is within politics. So yeah, we see the name calling and the lies and the various, tactics to win. So next slide, please. All right, so now we're going to talk about actually dialoguing. Now that we've covered the foundational skills of empathetic listening, empathetic questioning, and tolerance, let's talk about how to engage in an authentic dialogue. Next slide, please. Find in your next conflict or disagreement, but this time you are armed with the skills for authentic dialogue, so you choose not to argue. Next slide. Instead of arguing, you say this, or you say something like this. Hey, let's just say let's say my friend Dara. Hey, Dara, let's not argue or debate. Can we agree to hear each other out and then try to find some common ground? Or you can say something like this. Hey, Dara, I want to have an authentic dialogue about this. Can we agree to listen to one another and then come up with a win-win solution? Once they say yes, then they've opted in to an authentic dialogue. So the key is to get them to opt in, to literally pause and stop after you make your statement of initiating an authentic dialogue, is to stop and listen to them and wait for them to agree. Because once they've agreed, they've opted in. Because the fact of the matter is, you cannot have an authentic dialogue alone. You cannot authentic dialogue while someone else is debating. It won't work. You'll get really, really frustrated. But at the same time, if they haven't sat through a training like this, they don't know the skills of authentic dialogue. So it's up to you to model them. And that initiation question is the first step to modeling authentic dialogue. The other thing is, this happens at the moment that tensions begin to rise. So, that moment of tension, that moment of disagreement, that moment of conflict, it's important that you lean on your training that you're getting now, gather yourself and ask a question like this. Can anyone share another way that you may ask or initiate an authentic dialogue by using this framework? Maybe another way that you would say it?
I have a question.
Yes.
If everybody's heated, wouldn't you have to, maybe you want to take some time out and then come back together on? I'm saying maybe add another step or.
Absolutely. That's a great insight. That's a great insight, Julia. Just depending on the environment, depending on the situation, it may your first statement may be something like, "Hey, let's take a moment to cool off." Right?
Right, and then we can talk it out or.
Mm-hmm. So if that's what I'm hearing, how would you say that, Julia?
I guess I would say it seems like the discussions is getting, a lot of emotion around it. Why don't we just take a few minutes to chill out and then come back to our talk, and
Okay.
then maybe suggest about the what the objective of our talk is. Like you have this idea, win-win or common
Mm-hmm.
ground, but like I said with my son, he comes up with these like way out there political arguments, and then like I don't really. So I would say time out, but then I don't know what the next step is.
Okay, so the next step is what you're looking at on the screen right there. And it's a matter.
Yeah, I want to learn more about this, and
Mm-hmm.
okay.
Yes. So it'll make sense as we continue to work our way through.
Okay.
But before I move on, I just want to see if anyone else wants to take a stab at how you would invite someone to an authentic dialogue, putting something like these two examples in your own words. Does anyone want to take a stab at it? Okay, so we'll move forward. Okay, next slide. Okay, so now that the other person has accepted your invite to dialogue, you will have to model the skills of empathetic listening, speak.
Sundiata, you're gonna have to back up. We lost you right as you launched in about this slide.
Something like, "Hey, I don't want to argue." Yes.
We lost your voice just as you began talking about this slide. Could you back up, please?
Yes. Give me 1 second. Let me see if I can switch to calling in really quick. Give me 1 second, okay?
Okay. Thanks for your patience, everyone. And thanks for joining us live. Maybe while we wait, we can think about scenarios and how to apply some of what he's already shared with us in scenarios we've already experienced. I found it hard for me to think of ways to reframe those questions right now in this moment. But, when called to speak and volunteer, but maybe while we're sitting here, we can still think about and imagine. Maybe it'll come to us.
I was gonna say, because I also was kind of struggling with how to reframe it, and what I realized is that usually the conflict is like trying to I just was gonna say, Deanna and I were saying how we were having a hard time coming up with ways to reframe the question from the last slide, and I was saying how what I realized while I was trying to think of it is usually the conflicts that I'm trying to resolve are between siblings. So it's like less about me, like obviously me, I'm modeling it for them. I know that as their parent, I'm modeling everything for them. But it's usually like when I'm trying to help two children work something out, and what do I say to encourage them to listen to each other? Because usually what happens is even if I say like something along the lines of like, oh, would you be willing to, you know, let your brother finish what he's saying and really listen before you do it, then, you know, my daughter will sort of be like, oh, you know, it's kind of like she becomes very defensive of it. So it's like, what? Oh, anyway, so that was sort of my question for that. Here,
Okay, yes. So you all can hear me good now, right? Thumbs up. Okay.
Yes.
So yes. So I often find myself modeling this for my children, and co-modeling, literally doing it with them, co-managing, you know, my children's conflicts with them to help them learn these skills. So literally I will, in some instances, I will just have to insert the language, you know, in these situations and let them know also, you know, it's a process. One, they have to see me, you know, do it for them. So when they have an issue or we have some type of disagreement, I listen to them without interrupting them. And then I'm able to remind, and I'm actually going to get to that in the next screen, and then I'm able to remind them that I listened to you. So I respected you and listened to you while you expressed how you felt. I would like for you to do the same for me. And then when it comes to, you know, disagreements amongst each other, I'll do the same thing. I'll say, you know, this is what we discuss, you know, as a family. You know, we want to resolve conflicts differently in a way that shows love and respect and honors one another's feelings. Okay, if we have to learn how to, you know, it's like kind of speaking to the theme, you know, that you are creating, the energy that you're creating, the tone that you're creating for your family, and continuing to reiterate it, and also continuing to model it. And it may take some time, just depending on how often you've used similar type tactics, but it may take some time to get them adjusted to it. But it's just something you have to do over and over and over again, and then, you know, they will get it. So if I have to remind one of them, hey, you know, your brother's speaking or your sister is speaking, let's listen to him until he finishes. And then we listen together. And then I'll say, okay, now, you know, the other sibling can speak. You know, go ahead and share how you feel. And then I'll tell them what we did. I'll say, you know, how does it feel to be listened to? You know, and we listen empathetically. We're going to listen empathetically to you. And we may ask questions and just kind of modeling the whole thing. So I hope that helps. Okay.
Yeah,
and I think,
thank you.
Okay. And I think that as I go through and get through this, it'll all kind of come together. And we're almost done, just so you all know. Okay, so where are we? So we on this screen here where it says, okay, great, let's take turns speaking and listening, you go first. So the importance of that is that it gives you an opportunity, again, to model those skills that we talked about. So let's see, next slide, please. I think you went 2 slides. Can you go back to the previous one?
Yes, if I can figure out how to do that.
Okay, you can leave it there. Don't worry about it.
Sorry.
Okay, that's okay. So round one is basically the other person speaking, you listening, and the other person speaking. Okay? So while the other person is speaking, you're obviously empathetically listening. And you're also taking the opportunity to ask empathetic questions. Okay? And let me see. You're taking the opportunity to ask empathetic questions, and of course you are holding space by being tolerant. And then when round 2 rolls around, it's your turn to speak, and it's the other person's turn to listen. But again, the other person hasn't sat through this training. So again, it's important for you to say something like what I'm about to say. Before you speak, remind the other person that you listen to them without interruption, and you asked questions so that you could fully understand them, and that you would like them to do the same for you. So for example, this is what I do. So if I was, in a authentic dialogue with Deanna, I would say, Deanna, before I speak, I just want to remind you that I just listened to you. Did you feel heard? And she may say, yes. Okay, you want to model with me, Deanna? So Deanna, thank you for sharing how you felt. Did you feel heard?
Yes, thank you for listening. That felt really good.
Awesome. I was intentional about not cutting you off and really listening to you and asking questions to really understand why you're upset and the reasons behind what you feel. So before I speak, I want to ask, would you please hold that same space for me and allow me to express myself fully before you speak again?
I will try.
Thank you.
I will do my best.
Okay. Okay. So here's what I can share with you all. That is so important because Deanna, and I'm sure all of you would agree that even though it's hard, it would be a lot easier if the person just gave you that space. If the person just listened to you without interrupting, it'd be a lot easier. But again, as someone who's done this, I appreciate Deanna's honesty, because here's what I've done when someone did interrupt. I would just remind them nicely. I would say, I listened to you until you were done. Could you please do the same for me? And it's like they can't object to that because I gave them that respect. And most people are going to want to reciprocate and give you the same because you led, you modeled it, you gave it to them first. And if you truly empathetically listened, and if you truly asked empathetic questions and they truly felt heard, it's the magic. I call it the magic of authentic dialogue. It works. Not only do I use this in my personal relationships, I also use this to mediate conflicts for couples. I've used it to mediate conflicts for groups, and I've seen the magic of this work. Literally, people who were at odds, reaching out to me afterwards, just saying thank you. I've never felt heard before. So it's just, again, I call it the magic of authentic dialogue. When people feel heard, not only are they more willing to listen to you, but they're also more willing to compromise. They're more willing to, make concessions and meet you in the middle when they feel truly heard and understood. Next slide, please. So after both parties or all parties have been heard, listened to, and have had a chance to express themselves, the next step is to propose a solution. To propose a solution or something that you can try to move forward with to either solve the problem or agree to something that you can move forward doing together that resolves the conflict. So you could say something like this: let's propose a solution that considers both of our needs that we both can agree to. Is that okay? So again, you're the one with the training. So you're the one who has to initiate this next step. So after you feel like you really have a grasp of what they were trying to articulate, and you feel like they have a grasp of what you were trying to articulate, now is your turn to step in and say, okay, let's propose a solution that considers both of our needs that we both can agree to. And then you can either propose something first, or you can tell them to go first, but then you just make a proposal. And because you both have listened to one another, again, the magic of authentic dialogue is going to make it really easy to find those connection points, to find that common ground. Through the listening and the empathetic questioning, the common ground would have made itself evident by now, okay? And then you propose a solution. If someone doesn't consent to it, they have an opportunity to propose a solution, and you literally go back and forth until you can come up with something that you both feel good about and both can consent to. I'll pause there for any questions. Any comments?
I have a question. What if your argument is about like a fact, like what is true? Like you disagree about a specific fact. Then what's the solution?
Well, again, so one of the things that I've learned is that facts are relative and the truth, and even the truth is relative. Everyone has a perspective. Everyone has a lens. And it's really important to be humble enough to listen to, again, what are the fears? What are the concerns behind, the underlying divide and what the discussion is? Like, what do you really want? What are you trying to accomplish? And that's where you'll find common ground. So you'll probably, depending on what the it is, within authentic dialogue, it's about learning. So that's one of the other things that I mentioned early on. Authentic dialogue is also about learning. So when you're in a position of authentic dialoguing and you're literally empathetically listening and asking questions, you're both learning from one another. So when you're learning from one another, you will be able to find the common ground. You will say, okay, I understand. You will be able to say, okay, I understand why you believe that. I understand why that's true for you. This is where tolerance comes in as well. Because just because something is true for someone else doesn't mean that it has to be true for you, but it also doesn't mean that we have our beliefs have to be at odds. Our beliefs have to be in competition with one another. So again, the question is, okay, once you both understand why whatever it is true for one another, then it's like, okay, how can we move forward together peacefully and love in a loving, caring way? That's what's important. It's not about trying to change the other person. So that's another key thing about authentic dialogue. It's not, depending on what it is, it's not about trying to change the other person. It's about how can we bring our two individual selves together to move forward cohesively and peacefully with a greater understanding of one another. I hope that makes sense, Julia. Makes sense.
I'm thinking about it, yeah. I'll have to try it.
Okay. Yeah, it's a process. It totally goes against, our us versus them, winner and loser, paradigm that we live in.
Well, as soon as you get heated up, you sort of feel like you want to win or something. When emotions run high or something.
Mm-hmm. But that's the key. That's why the title of this offering is about resolving conflicts peacefully. Because as we see modeled for us in the conventional greater society, there is no model for resolving conflicts necessarily peacefully, where all parties feel respected, all parties feel heard, all parties feel like they consent to whatever solutions or decisions are being made going forward. That does not currently exist. Mm-hmm. By implementing this in our lives individually, in our relationships, in our individual relationships, or in our small groups, I believe that is us doing our part to, create the world that we want to live in, a peaceful world, and make the world a better place. So we all have the ability to, have a positive impact just by implementing these processes within our own relationships. Because the opposite leads to perpetual war. War on a small scale is the wars within our homes. War on a larger scale is the wars that we see going on in the world, in our environment, because people are trying to win instead of listening to one another and being tolerant of each other's beliefs and finding a way to find common ground.
Really great question, Julie. Really important. Thank you.
I have another question, in regards to helping kids with the conflict. And your example, the way you explained it before was great. That was really helpful. But I guess what I'm wondering is, how often do you step in to these conflicts between kids, right? Because, so for example, I'm an unschooler. My kids are home all day. They don't go to school. We're all together. And, there sometimes can be a lot of really small conflicts. And then sometimes there are big ones. And I usually try to see how they're handling it on their own. But yeah, a lot of times I feel like when I do try to help, and it could be because of the methods that I'm using, but it's not always welcomed. And I would like to be able to walk through with them. But I guess I'm just wondering, what is there a certain time when you're like, oh yeah, this is going to be something I'm going to step in for, and this is going to be something I'm going to sit it out and let's see what happens?
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. There's times where I just let it go, and there's times where I step in, and I realize that it's an ongoing process. I realize I'm planting seeds And I also realize that the times that I do step in, I'm modeling, and that ultimately is going to become internalized. Also, more importantly, is when I'm in direct conflict or disagreement with one of them. That's the real chance that I get to shine, and I get to really model these skills, and that ultimately, long term, is going to give them something to fall back on as they continue to mature and as they continue to get older. I believe that they'll mature into being able to see the difference in the outcomes that they get when they choose to go the debate-based conflict route versus the peaceful, authentic dialogue conflict route. I feel like it's just our jobs to equip them, and ultimately they're going to make their own choice in the different environments that they're in on which skills they want to use. And I just think that that's a lot better than not having these skills at all. So, but yeah, even with everything I'm saying and with the work I do, you know, the challenge for my children is that, you know, I co-parent, so they have two different households they have to navigate. So their other, you know, household doesn't necessarily do things the way I do it, because I'm also an unschooler, conscious parent, and obviously I teach authentic dialogue. So I take a different approach than they get when they're with, say, their grandparents, or they get, you know, in other, you know, settings. So, you know, that's something to consider as well. And don't beat yourself up if, you know, it doesn't work every time. I think it's kind of unrealistic to think that they're going to pick it up immediately. It's just the long game. Think the long game.
Okay. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. I want to just do a quick time check.
I just want to add something there. Is that all right?
Well, give me 1 second, because I just want to know from Deanna really quick. I know it's 1 o'clock, so that's the 1 hour mark. Do we have more time?
We can continue for as long as other people are able to hang on till you're complete. Yes.
Okay. Okay. Yes, Julia.
Oh, well, as a parent, I think sometimes we get like, we're just listening.
Okay, Julia, did you have something to say?
Yeah. Can you hear me? Oh, okay. As a parent, you know, you want your kids to be doing a good job, like socially, and have good emotional intelligence and everything. But they are only kids. So sometimes, like when you hear them, it kind of triggers something in you that you don't like, and then you get involved.
For some reason, I can't hear you. It's like you're breaking up. Julia.
I can hear you well. I think you'll be recorded all right.
All right. I'm not muted, right?
No.
Mm-hmm.
So, doctor, I'm saying that as a parent, and these are your children that you're trying to help, sometimes what they do triggers your like anxiety or whatever, and compels you to get involved when it probably be just as well to just let them fight it out if they're not hurting each other. You know, in terms of deciding like when you want to get involved and when you don't, you have to examine like, am I just trying to make myself more comfortable by like trying to solve their argument? Can you hear me? Does that make sense?
Yes, that's really important point. Mm-hmm. Did you hear that, Dr. Soon-Jahta?
Absolutely.
All right.
Yeah.
Can I add something?
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yes.
Is it possible for me to add something?
Can you all still hear me okay? Yes, please go ahead.
Okay. So thinking about, because I also have children,
yes.
you know, and we homeschool, although not unschool, although unschool right now. And I've noticed like during this time, you know, when we have been, you know, home, is like, yeah, there's definitely more of arguments happening. But what I've noticed for myself is that sometimes, and it kind of like, you know, builds up on what Julia said, it's like, I do have to like kind of like get comfortable with my own uncomfortableness, kind of like, you know, okay, you know, I think for right now, you know, the time is to like for them to resolve it and for me to see where they can go, you know, like, you know, with it. And on other times, you know, I know that I feel compelled to step in but like, and directly, like, kind of, like, yeah, this has to end. But what I found for myself is like asking them telling them, okay, this is what I see is happening right now. I see this is going somewhere, there is an argument starting here. Do you guys need my help with resolving it? And sometimes they say yes, and sometimes they said no. But when they say no, and I say, okay, so, and they will resolve it. Like, the way that, it really, like, kind of like, surprise me in a way that, oh yeah, actually, they know how to use, those skills. It's just me reminding them, okay, guys, that you have skills, like me believing in them, like by asking them, okay, do you need my help right now? Because I can see something is happening. Do you guys need this? And then, kind of like, they switch automatically, and they find, their own solutions, to whatever is going, is going on. So that's like, and sometimes like, it's like, it's really like depending, on my level of, I would say, of how tuned I am, on day-to-day basis, to whatever, they are doing and how receptive I am, because sometimes it's like, I just want them to, to finish arguing, it's like, I'm tired, of this cycle. But when I kind of like try to, not to resolve it for them, but ask them if they need help, this what I saw, like, work like wonders, like during this time, actually. So that's, that's what I've kind of like observed, for myself, and for a much different dynamic, in my house, that is happening, right now. That's
amazing insights. Thank you. I love that. I love those insights. I think that's an amazing, some amazing tips. I'm going to use some of that language myself. Just ask them if they want my help, and that alone reminds them that they have the tools. Use them. I love it. Thank you. I just want to say really quick, if anyone wants me to email them, because I remember you didn't have to register for this, so Deanna may not have everyone's email. So you can email me at dr.soonjahta. You can email me at dr.soonjahta@gmail.com. I believe it's at the end of these slides as well. Actually, it's not. I don't think so. But I put it into the. Can you also hear me? Because I got a call coming through. Okay. I put it into the chat in the Zoom chat. Before we have any more comments or questions, I want to go through the last scenario. I think this last scenario will give you some ideas. So could you go to the next slide, please? All right. Okay, so we're going to go to the last round of our game, No More Arguments, the game. Raed has a school project due on Monday. On Friday after school, his mother, Pearl, tells him that she expects him to complete his project on Saturday. Raed gets upset and tells Pearl that he planned on relaxing all day Saturday and completing the project on Sunday. Pearl gets upset and tells Raed that she doesn't think it's a good idea to wait until the last minute. Raed then says, "Mom, I don't want to argue. Can we take a moment to hear each other out and then agree on a solution that we both can feel good about, please?" Pearl agrees. They take turns expressing their feelings and concerns. Pearl shares that she really wants Raed to do well in school, and she's afraid that Raed will get in the habit of procrastinating. Raed shares that he's really stressed from a long week and that he really needs to unwind Saturday. He also shared that he does his best work and focuses more when he does projects like this one the day before they are due. After asking questions to get a better understanding of one another's feelings and concerns, they agreed to a solution that they both felt good about. Pearl agreed to trust Raed and allow him to complete the project Sunday if that worked best for him. And Raed agreed that if he felt rested by Saturday evening, that he would start working on his project at that time. Was this an A, debate, B, discussion, or C, authentic dialogue? Yes, 3s all around for authentic dialogue. So, yes, thank you, Misha. I see your C as well. Glad you could join us. All right, so what was interesting, or let me say this, what really is powerful about that scenario that I explained to you all earlier is how people are willing to compromise more once they feel heard and understood. And you'll notice that in that scenario, both Raed and Pearl were willing to make compromises after they went through the authentic dialogue. You know, Pearl decided she's going to trust Raed, right? And that he can complete the project on Sunday if that worked best for him because she understood, you know, what he was trying to convey. Because they listened to one another. Instead of just dominating and telling him what to do and building up resentment, she listened. And Raed, in turn, because he felt listened to and he felt heard and he felt respected, he said, you know what, if I am feeling recharged, you know what, Mom, because I understand your concerns as well. If I'm feeling recharged by Saturday evening, I'll go ahead and get started on it a little bit. So, very powerful example. I feel like that really brings home, you know, the points that I was trying to convey throughout this training. Next slide, please. This is the final slide. So what you learned is the differences between an authentic dialogue, a debate, and a discussion. You learned the 3 foundational skills of authentic dialogue, and you learned how to initiate and engage in an authentic dialogue to resolve a conflict. And then the last slide has my website. And I will stop for questions, but thank you all. I will hang around for questions, but thank you all for coming out. Thank you for your insightful comments and questions. I really, really appreciate you. Are there any more questions or comments?
So I had a question. How to put, and obviously, you know, I know that it will take a lot of practice, but how to put those skills into action with someone who I can, like, through experience clearly see that with someone who is wired for winning, like, you know, someone who has to win every single time.
Yes. In that case, it's just a matter of you expressing to that person how valuable the relationship is to you with this person, and how, you know, just having an honest, authentic conversation with the person and letting them know how that makes you feel. You know, if you feel like you're unheard, if you feel like you're not being respected, you know, you have to ask the person, do you want me to feel this way? Do you want me to feel like I'm not respected? Do you want me to internalize disrespect from you? Do you want me to internalize that I don't matter to you, or my value is not the way I value you? These are all feelings that I'm having, and I want to have an honest conversation with you about that. And then also I want to present to you a solution, a way for us to communicate where we both feel heard, we both feel respected, and we both work towards solutions that we both can consent to and feel good about. So it's really about having a heart-to-heart with that person, letting them know that the current mode of communication isn't working for you, letting them know how it makes you feel, and then offering a solution. And what I can share with you is at my website, there is a more in-depth training that you can watch on Authentic Dialogue under courses. And it's a free course that you can take at your own leisure. And I would suggest taking it with that person after having the heart-to-heart, listening to that training together. It's about 20 minutes, listening to it together, and then, you know, putting it into practice.
Thank you.
You're welcome. I see that you're talking, Julia, but you're on mute.
Now you hear me? Okay.
Yes.
All right. That last conversation, I've had that dozens of times with my one child, where, you know, we talk about the repercussions of like waiting until the last minute to do something. and about procrastination, and they decide to do it their way, and then it doesn't have a good result, for example. So how, like, as a parent, you're anxious thinking your child is going to, screw up and not be able to finish their project. Like, that's their modus operandi. So how do you, like, have that as a learning experience? Like, how would you come back from that and say, look, waiting till the last minute was like a bad idea, so.
Well, first what I would do if I was in your situation, Julia, I would take audit of how I've showed up in those conversations first. I would take because if this is your first time hearing about skills like this, maybe you've modeled for your children those ways of communicating. Maybe your communication pattern in your household, for whatever reason, may be one of combativeness. It may be one of more geared towards debate. You may be showing up in a way that is geared more towards debate. So you also have an opportunity to change that now. You have a chance to say to them, listen, you have a chance. Here's what I would do. I would own it. I would apologize and say, up until this point, this is what I've modeled for you. This is what, the ways that we've communicated in our family and our household. I would like to do things differently. I would like to, communicate in a way where we all feel heard, where we all feel like, respected, we all feel loved. And
that is not
again,
a debate. You're saying not every subject is a debate. Like if it has been, you're saying.
Right. Like if that's been, because what's happened is if you haven't been communicating the way that I'm talking about, then there's years of resentment that have built up. There's years of resentment from a lack of trust that have built up. There's years of resentment from a lack of, again, that mutual respect has built up. So now your children may be, pushing back in a lot of different ways if they haven't felt heard.
Even if it hurts them, you're saying, even if it continues their pattern? Like for example, that idea of procrastinating.
I'm getting there. It's a reason why I'm.
Yeah.
There's a reason why I'm saying it this way, because if you continue to address we can't just talk about procrastinating if you're not addressing the root cause of the issue.
Okay.
So the whole procrastination and the doing the work late and all those things, that's if you just continue to address like those incidents when they happen, you're constantly putting out fires. You're constantly putting the Band-Aid on the root cause of the issue. And the root cause of the issue was a lack of trust and a lack of, effective positive communication and, just loving communication, authentic communication. So what I'm trying to do is help you to reset the foundational communication framework in your life and in your family's life. And I believe once you're able to do that, then having conversations about procrastination or anything else will go a lot different.
Okay. I'll try it. I'll let you know.
Okay. So what I suggest is definitely emailing me or sending me your email address so I can send you the cheat sheet that has the notes, the tip sheet that has the notes from everything I shared in this training. And also, if you would like to visit my website to look at the Authentic Dialogue course that I created, you could do that as well if you want to really internalize this and really adopt, these methodologies and these understandings. I think it would go a long way. I also love the book called The Conscious Parent. That's a book that I recommend, for anyone, The Conscious Parent by Dr. Shefali. It does a good job of giving it's connected to the things I'm talking about. That's the best way to put it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Soon-Jahta. I'm so grateful for this wisdom and these insights. And I know everybody got a lot out of it. I think we're going to wrap this up. If you have a final closing statement, we can bring it to a close. And if anybody has any further questions, they can email you.
I think I've said everything. I appreciate everyone for being here. Thank you again for having me, Deanna. And as I'm typing something into the thread before you cut it off, I just wanted to type the name of the book. Yeah, I'm truly grateful for all of your questions. I hope that there's something you can take away from this that'll serve you all. So thank you so much. I love y'all.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you. Peace.
Peace.